Hi, I'm Joan Dice, and I am the Joel Loom School Concierge and also the social media ambassador. Mouthful there. And I'm here to give you a tutorial on the using the SilverSilk Loom, using SilverSilk Pipe Chain, and we'll be using seed beads and fire polish beads to do a totally different weave. We're going to be weaving beads around the pipe chain, around our warps, and also between the warps. And so let's get started so you can see how this is done. And thank you for joining me.
Okay, this is what I'm going to use for my project. I went ahead and laid out the beads so I could just go down the line. And I usually use, like with this, 33 6mm fire polish beads for about 6 1/4 inches. That's what I want my weaving to be. And I'm going to use fire line and some seed beads. And of course some pipe chain. And my SilverSilk Loom. So what I do is, now I've already cut off pieces off of this one for another project, so it's not as long as what you get through the SilverSilk store. But so what I'm going to do, just to save as big of pieces as I can, I'm going to put one end in at the end, put it through. See. Make sure you can see that. Okay. I'm going to go to the other end, directly across, put it through. And I'm going to skip a space and come up the other way. Don't worry about wasting any of the pipe chain, because these are great for spacer beads or even beads. A longer piece can be for ear wire. Now, if you want to make it longer, what you can do, have a longer piece, do the same thing with the end here and make the longer piece in the middle so that's all one piece and you're not cutting off a lot. So, you could use that for a pendant or something. Now I'm, using my jewel loom board, but I just find when I'm using small seed beads size 11, I can pick them up better on a bead mat. So I'm going to pour some of these out here. And just to let you know, well, I won't skip ahead, sorry. For the fire line, now, I'm using like turquoise, but most of my beads are blue, and the seed beads are like a bluish turquoise. I just thought the turquoise and the blue would be pops of color next to each other and would be really pretty, and this blue would blend in. So the way I'm doing this, normally I'd say, don't do any more than a wingspan, but I'm going to do 1.5 wingspans, maybe a tiny bit more. The fire line, so I'm going to cut that because I found that's a perfect length, and you'll see why I'm using a longer piece, because it's not going to hurt, and I found I can get the whole project done in one piece without having to add any on. But if you need to work with shorter pieces, go ahead. And this is an unusual project because you're going to be I'm going to be working with 2 needles, and I just found it's a lot easier this way, to keep it uniform on both sides. So you could use your jewel loom needles. You've probably heard me say this before, I'm a big fan of the big eye needle, because when I make mistakes, I can easily remove it, get it off, and get it back on again. So just a matter of opening up the big eye needle to get it in. And I usually try to put about the same, because I'm working together with them, I try to put about the same amount of thread in on both sides for the beginning of this. And you'll see why in a minute. I mean, it doesn't have to be real accurate, but just to help you. Okay. So then you want to take your first bead and put it on the string and measure it so it's straight down, you know, right in the middle. Then I'm going to take these needles, one on each side, put it under the pipe chain, and I'm going to start working at this end because when I cut off the smaller pieces, I can still have a longer piece with that middle piece. So hold it up, and this is where it's kind of good to have your cork board or your bead mat, you know, your cork on your bead board or your bead mat here so you can stick your needles in. But we're going to start out by, see, I'm underneath. I'm going to take one side, go through the bead, and then I'm going to go underneath the other side. Whoops. And guess who made a mistake there? Let me adjust my threads again. I'm going to even them out. Okay. So then, I mean, that's a long length. You can, you know, shorten your length as you can, because you can always move the needle back through, you know, move the thread. So I'm going over with the other side and underneath. And then I'm pulling the thread together. Okay. Now, I mean, that locks it in place. We're not doing any knots, but we're going to do that 3 times in the same bead just to kind of lock it in place since we're not doing any knots in the beginning. So I take my needle on my right side through and I go underneath. And you'll see why I'm doing this in a minute, because it's, you know, instead of doing it the normal way, because it's just structure of the beads, plus with the pipe chain, there was no way to tuck the knots in right there, so I'm just trying to minimize knots. So I'm pulling those together. One more time, go over the pipe chain, through the bead, under the pipe chain, and I have tried where, you know, when you see this type of stitch on other bracelets, where they tried to narrow it down at the beginning and go smaller bead to bigger, it was because of the thickness of the pipe chain, it was really taking up most of the design of the bead. That's why I came up with it this way. So now I have it locked in place. That blue blends in pretty well with this aqua. Okay, I'm just going to shorten these cords a little bit before I start the next step. Now, since I'm using 6mm fire polish, I found, you know, when I do in the wraparound with the seed beads on my bracelets, that I just need 9 seed beads on each side. So let's pick up 9. Sometimes if I do a pile, I can just scoot it through and I'll pick up some. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and one more, 9. Okay, now I'm going to do the same with the other side. One, 2, oops. But if I find there's 2, if I find I'm not picking them up that way, then I start picking them up the normal way. Okay, that's 3. This is not going to want to do it for me too much. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so once I get that done, I'm going to pick up my first bead, my second bead, I guess I should say. Put the needle through one side and put the needle on the opposite side through. So they crisscross each other through the middle of the bead. And I pull it up like this. But then the side that's coming over here, I have to tuck it over under that side so it's coming out from under. And then I do the same with the other one. Oops. But you don't want to get in that loop when you're doing it. There. Because you want to set it up for the next one. So I'm just scooting it up there until I get for the next bead. And we're going to count 9 again. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, put that in the mat and let's do the other needle. There. That's the bad part, is doing all these little seed beads. Takes a little bit longer with the tutorials. But I'm not going to show this the whole length because I want to take the time to show you several different ways to finish this off. Or a few different ways. I shouldn't say several. Okay, let's have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So then I'll grab my next bead. Let's tighten that up. And I crisscross my needles through the bead. And pull them out the other side. If somebody comes up with a better way of doing this, I would love to hear it. And we could put it in the blog and also in the comments on the videos too, or even in the description of the videos. But this is the easiest way I found to do it. And if you don't want to do seed beads, if you find a cord that's thicker, you know, I mean, that would show against that. Like here, for example, here's some like knotting cord. Like that would go against it, and you wouldn't have to use beads as long as your bead in the middle can fit it through twice. And that would be a pretty design too, without having to use seed beads on the sides. And another thing is, you know, when you're looking at this board, it's not only good for SilverSilk, but if you have other thicker cords you want to try, such as you know, leather cord, or even, you know, remember the other side, it goes even thicker. So you can try this with, you know, leather cord or other thick cords too. 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, if you're using size 5 millimeter fire polish, you only need 8 of the size 11 seed beads on each side. Because one of the bracelets I did make, I only used size 5 fire polish, 5 millimeter. So, you know, just adjust your seed beads according to the size of the beads you're using in the middle. Because you don't want a really loose wrap. Or maybe you do. It depends on the look you're going for. Six, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Slide those down. Make sure this is tight. So that's where it's supposed to be. And then I grab my next bead. And I crisscross, you know, put the needles in on either side to crisscross through the middle of the bead. Pull it. And then make sure that the needles go underneath the cords because they start out on top. And that way the wraparound look for the seed beads will be there. So I don't want to keep going with this in the tutorial. I'll finish it up and show you how to finish it. But this is how, you know, just keep doing these steps until you get to the length you want. Like I said, I'm going to go to about 6 1/4 inches or 33 6 millimeter beads, or 33 6 millimeter beads, yes. So unless something else occurs that I want to show you, I'll pop back in. But if you know, just replay this part of the video if you're having problems. Okay, now we're going to finish off the bracelet. Just one last hint. If you're, as you're working, if you find the beads are a little bit loose, just tighten them up, and you can give it one more last tight before you finish the next bead. So I have my seed beads on my wire, just or on my thread to, you know, make this go a little more quickly. Put my needles through the big bead, you know, crisscross like we've been doing. Tighten it up, but the needle now that's on this side of the bead will go underneath that cord, and the needle that's on this other side of the bead will go underneath the other cord, and then you tighten it up like you've been doing. Now to finish it off, we're going to keep wrapping around the cords just like we've been doing with the figure 8s, but we're going to do this 3 times just like we did at the beginning. So this goes in once and underneath the cord, and I need to tighten that because it got loose. And then this one goes over the cord, through the bead, and under the next cord. And then over, through, and under. Grab the other needle, go over the cord, through the bead, I'm taking it through, and then I'll go under. Whoops, it's getting tangled up in there. I want to keep it on the opposite side so it doesn't get all tangled in the beads. Okay. see. Let's see what I did. Okay. Somehow both mine ended up on the same side. Okay. So now it's time for this one to go back through. This will be the third pass for both sides. So I go through the bead and under the cord. Okay, over the cord, through the bead, and under the cord. Well, I make sure everything's tight so things don't loosen up. Now I'm going to tie it off. It's kind of hard to find a place to tie it. So I'm just going to tilt this sideways so you can see. And I think I'll take one side, go through the bead so I can get both needles on the other side. And then getting the needle under the cord so it could be even with the next to it. And then we're going to, so since, let's see, I know it's hard to see, but after passing the needle through, I've got both threads on one side of the bead. We're going to tie a knot there. I'm just trying, you know, this is about the easiest way I can find to kind of hide the knot. And then I'm going to tie it one more time tight. Then we're going to get our thread burner. You want to be really careful. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll take it off so you can see what I'm doing. Taking it off the loom. So I have my knot here, and I'm going to use my thread burner so I can make a little ball on each one so they won't pass through the knot. So I'm going to be careful not to go through any of the wefts, you know, you're weaving, and cut your cord. Make a little ball at the end with what's still a little bit up. I left a little bit so I can make that little ball. Okay, I'm going to cut the other cord. Or if you want to weave both threads back through to hide your cord, you know, like we usually do, but I just find it easier to do it this way. Make my little ball so it won't go back through. It'll be too big to go back through. So we're going to get our needles out of the way. Now, we have to decide how we're going to end it. The easiest way to end it, and you've seen Jules do this on a tutorial from a couple weeks ago, is you can trim your ends, which I put the end cap here and like trim it to the edge, and then, you know, just close up the end caps. I'll put the link because I'm not going to do that this time, because the way I'm going to show you several different ways to finish it, different ways without on our next tutorial. And so, you know, but as far as cutting goes, just decide what you're using at the end. I'm going to be using the SilverSilk Pipe Chain end caps. So I'm just putting it against to figure out where I want the top. If you leave a little bit of space between the bead and the where the end cap starts, that's not going to hurt anything. I'd rather leave a tiny bit too much space and not enough. So I cut it, and I'm going to try to cut evenly with the other side. and do the same thing on this end. You know, my beads are nicely smoothed out. Measure it. And remember, the pipe chains makes great like spacer beads or, you know, just decorative things. So save all those pieces. I've done quite a bit with the smaller pieces. So this is a little bit uneven, so I'm going to just trim a little bit more for this end. Okay.
Okay, I just want to make a correction here. When I am using 6mm fire polish beads, I don't need 33 of them to make a 6¼ inch weave. I only needed about 27 to 28 and made about 6¼ to 6½ inches. When I was planning that, I was thinking my wrist was 7 3/4, but I've lost weight and it's 7 1/4 now. But I do like looser bracelets, so that worked out fine. When I used the 5mm fire polish, that's when I needed 33 beads to make it about 6 1/4 weave. So that I just wanted to correct that off so you don't get confused if you're trying to figure out how many beads you need according to how many inches. Okay, at the end of this tutorial, I did give you an idea of how to quickly finish off your cuff by using the SilverSilk double strand end caps. And that is a quick way, but in next week's tutorials, I'm going to be showing you or discussing 3 or 4 other different ways. So we're splitting this up so it doesn't end up over an hour long. So I hope you join me next week for different ways to finish off your cuffs, especially when you're using the SilverSilk pipe chain. Um, if you did use SilverSilk capture chain or pearlescent chain to do this type of weave around, um, I would do the double strand cuffs or do some seed beading or wire wrapping around those to hold them together. Danielle Wicks has a great tutorial on the SilverSilk um, YouTube channel on how to weave in caps with seed beads and super duos. And also, Neela has some great wire wrapping for the ends on the SilverSilk YouTube channel too. So I hope you join me next week, and thank you for joining me tonight. And